The word freak burns into my locker like a brand. I'm scrubbing it raw when Dad drops the bomb. Vanessa Thorne is moving in. My middle school nightmare, the queen bee who shattered me, is now my stepmom. She's already turning Chloe against me, her smile sharper than the knife I just hid in my sleeve. The bank statement in my pocket proves it. Vanessa's social security number belongs to a dead woman. And she's watching me right now, fingers tracing her bruised arm. The one she'll say I gave her. I have one shot to expose her before she buries me for good. The silver fork clattered against Maya's heirloom china, a sharp ring echoing through the dining room. David beamed, his hand tightening around Vanessa Thorne's manicured fingers. "I asked her this morning," he said, his voice thick with a boyish pride that turned Maya's stomach. Vanessa leaned forward, the candlelight catching the sharp edge of her diamond. The scent of her expensive, cloying lily perfume suffocated the aroma of the roasted lamb. Maya gripped the velvet upholstery of her chair until her knuckles whitened. Memories of locker room taunts and the cold sting of a slushie poured down her back surged forward, unbidden. Vanessa's eyes, once narrowed in teenage malice, now sparkled with a polished, adult cruelty. She didn't blink. A slow, predatory curve stretched her lips, a silent acknowledgement of the power dynamic shifting under this roof. "More wine, Maya?" David reached for the decanter, his thumb brushing the crystal. He missed the way Vanessa's smile sharpened, or how Maya's breath hitched in her throat. "It's a lot to take in," Vanessa purred, her voice smooth as polished marble. "We have so much catching up to do, sister-in-law." The word felt like a brand. Maya forced her lungs to expand, her gaze fixed on the jagged scar on Vanessa's chin, a remnant of a playground fall Maya had witnessed 20 years ago. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. David remained trapped in his bubble of domestic bliss, pouring Cabernet while the woman beside him savored the taste of a long-delayed victory. Maya swallowed the bile rising in her throat and reached for her glass, her fingers trembling against the stem. She watched Vanessa's left hand. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of the woman's thumb joint popping was a rhythmic, biological warning. To David, it was a nervous habit of a woman in love. To Maya, it was the sound of a predator chambering around. Maya's thumb tapped a rapid, silent code against her thigh, mentally logging the timestamp of the lie. 2014. Subject claims joy while displaying micro-expression of contempt. "You've grown so much, Maya," Vanessa continued, her voice light, airy, and entirely manufactured. "I remember when you were just a little girl in middle school. So spirited." Maya felt the phantom weight of the freak sign Vanessa had taped to her back in 7th grade. Her father looked between them, his eyes pleading for a harmony that didn't exist. He wanted this to work. He needed the house to feel full again, even if the person filling it was a hollowed-out shell of malice. Maya looked at the roasted lamb on her plate. It looked like gray, dead fiber. The math of the room was all wrong. One grieving father, one sociopathic intruder, and one girl who knew exactly how many seconds it took for a life to unravel. The next morning, the house felt like a staging ground. David had left for the city early, leaving the two women in a silent Cold War. Maya moved through the kitchen with clinical precision. She needed eyes where she couldn't be. She pulled a small decorative clock from her bag, a heavy faux wood piece with a ceramic owl perched on top. Inside the hollowed-out body of the bird, a tiny glass lens waited. She positioned the owl on the granite island, its gaze fixed on the kitchen table and the back door. The air in the kitchen smelled of lemon polish and the lingering, burnt scent of Vanessa's morning toast. Maya's fingers moved quickly, clicking the tiny memory card into place. It felt like a physical anchor in a world that was drifting into a fog of gaslighting. Perfect, Maya whispered. The hum of the refrigerator provided a steady, mechanical backdrop to her pulse. She checked the feed on her phone. The wide-angle lens captured the entire room in high definition. If Vanessa so much as sneered at the housekeeper or whispered a threat to Chloe when she arrived later, the data would be there. Raw, unfiltered, indisputable. Maya didn't trust her own memories anymore. Vanessa was too good at twisting them. But she trusted the unblinking eye of the sensor. She heard the soft thud of expensive heels on the hardwood in the hallway. Vanessa was coming. Maya quickly closed the app and tucked her phone into her pocket, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She grabbed a glass of water, trying to look casual, but her muscles were as tight as piano wire. Subverted, Vanessa entered the kitchen, draped in a silk robe that cost more than Maya's car. She didn't look at Maya. She went straight for the espresso machine. The hiss of steam filled the room, a sharp, angry sound. Maya saw Vanessa's phone sitting on the edge of the counter, the screen glowing with a notification. This was the moment. Maya knew she had to be smart. If she could get that phone, she could find the proof of whatever game Vanessa was playing. She'd seen Vanessa whispering into it late at night, her voice low and jagged. Maya stepped forward, her mind racing through the logic. If I can just grab it and run to my room, I can bypass the lock in 10 minutes. Dad won't be home for hours. This is the only way to get the hard data. She moved with the confidence of someone who had practiced the maneuver. As Vanessa turned to reach for a mug, Maya lunged. Her fingers closed around the cool glass surface of the phone. She felt a surge of triumph, a hot, electric spark of victory. She had it. The key to the kingdom. "Got you," Maya hissed, turning to bolt. But Vanessa was faster. A hand like a vice clamped onto Maya's wrist. The strength was shocking, a raw, physical power hidden beneath the silk and perfume. Vanessa didn't scream. She didn't gasp. She simply twisted Maya's arm behind her back, forcing her toward the colonial staircase in the hall. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" Vanessa whispered into Maya's ear. Her breath smelled of peppermint and something metallic. Maya struggled, her boots scuffing the polished mahogany of the stairs. "Let go. I know what you are." "I know what you are too, Maya. You're a lonely, broken girl who's about to lose everything." They reached the landing. Maya tried to pull away, to regain her balance, but Vanessa's grip shifted. In one fluid, terrifying motion, Vanessa didn't push Maya. She pulled her, but she didn't pull her down the stairs. Vanessa slammed her own forearm, the one Maya wasn't even touching, directly into the sharp, carved edge of the heavy mahogany banister. Crack! The sound of bone hitting wood echoed in the stairwell. Vanessa let out a shrill, piercing scream that shattered the silence of the house. She collapsed onto the floor, clutching her arm, her face contorting into a mask of pure, agonizing pain. Maya stood frozen, the phone still in her hand, but the victory had turned to ash. She looked down at Vanessa, who was now weeping, great, heaving sobs that sounded terrifyingly real. "Why?" Vanessa wailed, her voice carrying up to the vaulted ceiling. "Maya, I just wanted to be your friend. Why would you push me?" Maya looked at her own hands. They were trembling. She hadn't pushed her. She knew she hadn't. But as she looked at Vanessa's arm, a dark, angry purple bruise was already blooming across the skin. The smart play, snatching the phone, hadn't just failed. It had handed Vanessa the ultimate weapon. Maya wasn't the investigator anymore. In the eyes of anyone who walked through that door, she was the monster. The front door opened. David stood there, his briefcase hitting the floor with a heavy thud. He took in the scene, his fiancée on the ground in tears, and his daughter standing over her, holding the stolen phone like a smoking gun. The air in the hallway turned cold, and Maya felt the floor tilt beneath her. She had tried to trap a predator, but the trap had snapped shut on her own life. David rushed to Vanessa's side, his face pale with a mixture of horror and betrayal. "Vanessa! Oh my God, what happened?" Vanessa leaned into him, her body shaking. She wanted my phone. I told her no, and she just snapped, David. She shoved me." Maya tried to speak, but her throat felt like it was filled with dry sand. "Dad, no. She hit herself. I saw it. She hit the banister on purpose." David looked up at Maya. The warmth that usually lived in his eyes was gone, replaced by a hard, glassy distance. "Enough, Maya. I saw you standing there. I heard the scream." He helped Vanessa up, treating her like a piece of shattered porcelain. As they moved toward the living room, Vanessa glanced back over David's shoulder. For a split second, the tears vanished. Her eyes were dry, cold, and bright, with a terrifying intelligence. She didn't say a word, but the message was clear. "I own this house now." Maya retreated to the living room later that afternoon, her mind a chaotic spreadsheet of failures. She needed something, anything, to tip the scales back. She saw Vanessa's designer purse sitting on the sideboard, the gold clasp gleaming in the afternoon sun. Vanessa was in the den with David, likely milking the injury for all it was worth. Maya moved like a ghost. She reached into the bag, her fingers brushing against expensive leather and the scent of lilies. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, a bank statement. She retreated to her room, locking the door and sliding onto the floor. She smoothed the paper out. It was a standard statement from a bank in Indiana, but something caught her eye. The Social Security number listed at the top. Maya opened her laptop, her fingers flying across the keys. She bypassed the standard search engines, digging into the public records she'd learned to navigate during her long nights of self-taught forensics. She typed in the number. The screen flickered, the blue light reflecting in her wide eyes. Jennifer Scott, born 1991, deceased 2014. Maya's breath hitched. The woman downstairs, the woman her father was going to marry, was using the identity of a dead woman. The bank statement wasn't just proof of a lie, it was proof of a total fabrication. Vanessa Thorne didn't exist. She felt a cold shiver race down her spine. This wasn't just a high school bully grown up. This was a professional, a ghost. Maya looked at the apology ledger she'd found in a box of her mother's things, a small notebook where her mother had logged every mistake she thought she'd made. Maya felt a sudden, fierce need to protect that memory, to protect the house from the rot that was currently sitting in the den drinking tea. She spent the next hour cross-referencing. The real Jennifer Scott had been a nurse, a fixer who spent her life helping others before dying in a car accident. Vanessa had taken that life, that name, and turned it into a mask. Maya stood up, the bank statement clutched in her hand. She had to tell him. This wasn't about a bruise or stolen phone anymore. This was about survival. She marched toward David's home office. The smell of old paper and expensive tobacco usually calmed her, but today it felt like a tomb. David was sitting behind his mahogany desk, his head in his hands. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. "Dad," Maya said, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. You need to see this. She laid the bank statement on the desk. She explained the Social Security number, the death record in Indiana, the total lack of a Vanessa Thorne before 5 years ago. She spoke in the clinical, precise language she used when she was most afraid. David didn't move. He didn't even look at the paper at first. Maya, we talked about the investigations. The doctor said this is a coping mechanism for your grief. This isn't grief, Dad. It's math. Look at the numbers. She's using a dead woman's identity. David finally picked up the paper. He glanced at it, his eyes scanning the lines. Then he sighed, a long, weary sound that broke Maya's heart. I spoke to Vanessa about her past, Maya. She told me she changed her name after a traumatic relationship. She wanted a fresh start. This bank statement is probably just an old record from that transition. It's a clerical artifact. A clerical artifact? Dad, she's an identity thief. She's my fiancée. David's voice rose, a rare spark of anger flickering in his eyes. And I've already added her to the corporate accounts. I trust her. I need you to stop this, or I'm going to have to make some very difficult decisions about your living situation. Maya felt as if she'd been slapped. He wasn't just ignoring the evidence. He was actively shielding the person destroying him. He was a people pleaser who had finally found someone who knew exactly how to harvest his guilt. She backed out of the room, the bank statement feeling like lead in her hand. As she crossed the hallway, she saw Vanessa leaning against the doorframe of the kitchen. He didn't believe you, did he? Vanessa purred. She walked closer, the crack, crack, crack of her thumb echoing in the narrow space. You're trying to play detective in a world of professionals, Maya. It's adorable. But the wedding is moved up. Next week, Sunday. Next week? Maya gasped. That's impossible. Nothing is impossible when your father is so desperate for a perfect family that he'll sign anything I put in front of him. By this time next week, I'll be Mrs. Sterling. And you? You'll be a memory. Vanessa leaned in, her eyes like chips of ice. I'm going to enjoy watching you pack. This house is far too crowded with all this history. Maya retreated to her room, the walls feeling like they were closing in. She tried to call Chloe, her best friend, the one person who usually understood her. But when Chloe answered, her voice was different. Light, airy, and full of the same yoga instructor calm that Vanessa projected. Maya, honey, you're just being sensitive, Chloe said, the smell of vanilla and teenage certainty practically wafting through the phone. Vanessa is so sweet. She gave me those aromatherapy oils for my anxiety. Maybe you should just try to breathe. Maya hung up. She was alone. The digital wellness app on her phone chimed, a soft, mocking sound. She realized with a jolt of horror that the app wasn't there to help her. It was a tracker. Vanessa was watching her location, reading her texts, monitoring her every move. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a high-tech cage. That night, the air in the house grew heavy with the scent of ozone. A storm was coming, but the real danger was inside. Maya needed to clear her head. She went to the garage, the cold concrete floor biting through her socks. She just wanted to sit in the silence of the cars, away from the cloying perfume and the rhythmic popping of Vanessa's thumb. The garage was a cavern of shadows. The expensive SUVs sat like sleeping beasts. Maya sat on a workbench, her fingers tracing the cold metal of a heavy wrench. Suddenly, the motion sensor light flickered on, then died. A low, rhythmic humming filled the space. It was a deep, vibrating bass melody, a funeral dirge. Maya's skin prickled. She knew that sound. It was the humming henchman, the man she'd seen lurking in the background of Vanessa's photos. Justin Ward. A figure stepped out from behind her father's car. He was large, his cheap suit tight across his shoulders, his hands buried deep in his pockets. He didn't say a word. He just kept humming that low, terrifying tune. "Who are you?" Maya asked, her voice trembling. The man didn't answer. He moved toward her, his footsteps heavy on the concrete. He reached out, his hand closing around a heavy metal pipe leaning against the wall. Maya didn't wait. She swung the wrench with everything she had. It connected with the man's shoulder with a sickening thud. He let out a grunt of pain, the humming stopping for a split second. Maya bolted. She scrambled over the hood of the car, her heart screaming in her chest. She hit the button for the house door and dived through just as the man's fingers brushed her heel. She slammed the door and locked it, her breath coming in ragged, terrified gasps. She leaned against the door, the cold wood pressing against her back. Vanessa hadn't just stolen an identity. She had hired muscle. She was willing to use violence to keep Maya quiet. Maya ran to her room and grabbed her phone. She needed to upload the bank statement, the death certificate, everything she had. She opened her cloud drive, her fingers shaking as she hit upload. She watched the progress bar. 10%, 20%. Suddenly the screen turned red. Access denied. Files deleted by administrator. Maya stared at the screen. The folders were vanishing. One by one, her months of work, her timestamps, her deception log. All of it was being erased by an invisible hand. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She tried to stop it, but the phone was unresponsive. The digital wellness app had turned into a digital executioner. Vanessa wasn't just tracking her. She was purging the evidence in real time. Maya was being erased. The next evening was the formal engagement dinner. The house was filled with the smell of rosemary and roasted meat, a pungent aroma that made Maya feel physically ill. The dining room was a sea of black ties and expensive silk. David's business colleagues, the elite of the city, were all there to celebrate the merger of the Sterling and Thorne families. Vanessa moved through the crowd like a queen, her arm in a delicate silk sling. She looked fragile, beautiful, and utterly convincing. "It's been so hard," Maya overheard Vanessa telling a group of donors. "Maya is such a brilliant girl, but she's had a regressive psychotic episode. The grief over her mother. She started hallucinating. She even attacked me. It's heartbreaking, really." The guests looked at Maya with pitying eyes. They didn't see a teenager. They saw a problem to be managed. Maya felt the social walls rising around her, thick and impenetrable. She was being buried alive in a tomb of concern. She couldn't stay there. She slipped away, heading for the basement. It was the only place Vanessa hadn't touched yet. The air was cooler here, smelling of old dust in the ozone of the server racks. She found her father's old laptop, a clunky silver machine that predated the new marriage. It wasn't synced to the house network. It was dark. Maya sat on the floor, the cold concrete a familiar comfort. Ona connected to the neighbor's guest network, a weak signal, but enough. She began to dig. She didn't look for Vanessa's past this time. She looked at her father's present. She bypassed the basic security of the corporate logs, her fingers moving with a desperate, frantic speed. Exactly. There it was. $50,000. Transferred 3 days ago to an offshore account in the Caymans. Authorized by Vanessa Thorne using David's digital signature. "I have you," Maya whispered, a single tear tracking through the dust on her cheek. "I finally have you." But the basement door creaked open. Vanessa stood at the top of the stairs, the light from the hallway casting a long, distorted shadow. She didn't have her sling on. Her arm moved freely as she closed the door behind her and began to descend the stairs. "You never give up, do you?" Vanessa's voice was different now. No more purring, no more soft edges. It was jagged, like broken glass. Maya stood up, clutching the laptop to her chest. "I found the money, Vanessa. 50,000. I have the logs. You're going to jail." Vanessa laughed, a sharp, cold sound that echoed off the concrete walls. "Jail? Maya, look around you. Your father thinks you're insane. Your friends think you're a bully. Who is going to believe a psychotic teenager over the woman who's about to save David Sterling's soul?" She moved closer, her eyes fixed on the laptop. "Give it to me." "No!" Maya tried to dodge, but Vanessa lunged. They scuffled in the dim light, the smell of ozone and lilies clashing in the air. Vanessa was stronger, her fingers digging into Maya's shoulders. She slammed Maya against the heavy metal of the furnace, the heat radiating through Maya's shirt. Vanessa began to pull at the heavy storage shelves, the metal groaning as she tilted them. Boxes of old photos, holiday decorations, and Maya's mother's things crashed to the floor, creating a scene of absolute chaos. "Help!" Vanessa screamed, her voice suddenly high and terrified. "David, help! She's hurting me!" Subverted. Maya stood frozen, the laptop clutched in her trembling hands. She knew what was coming. She'd seen this play before. "I have the evidence," she told herself. "The data is right here. Once Dad sees the numbers, the $50,000, the offshore account, none of this theater will matter. Logic will win. It has to." She felt a strange sense of calm. She didn't even try to fix the room. She just stood there, a witness to the truth, waiting for the one person who could end this. The basement door burst open. David charged down the stairs, his face a mask of panic. He stopped at the bottom, his eyes wide. Vanessa was huddled on the floor, surrounded by the wreckage of the shelves. She was sobbing, her hair disheveled, her silk dress torn at the shoulder. She looked like a victim of a violent assault. Maya stood 5 feet away, the laptop held like a weapon, her face pale and set. "Maya." David's voice was a jagged shard of pain. "What have you done?" "Dad, look at the screen," Maya said, her voice remarkably steady. "I found it. She's stealing from you. $50,000. It's all right here. The offshore account, the signature. She's draining the retirement fund." She held the laptop out to him, her heart light with the expectation of relief. "See it? Please, just look at the numbers." David took the laptop. He looked at the screen for a fraction of a second. Then he looked at Vanessa, who let out a fresh, heart-wrenching wail. She tried to kill me, David. She said if I didn't leave, she'd burn the house down with both of us inside." David didn't look at the logs. He didn't look at the data. He looked at the injured woman he loved. And then he looked at his daughter, whom he now saw as a dangerous, unstable stranger. "I don't care about the money, Maya," David whispered. His voice was hollow, dead. "I don't care about any of it." He raised the laptop over his head. "Dad, no!" He slammed the machine down onto the concrete floor with a sickening metallic crunch. The screen shattered, the blue light flickering once, and then dying. He stomped on it again and again, his heavy dress shoes grinding the delicate circuitry into the dust. "I'm protecting my family," David screamed, his eyes wet with tears. "I'm protecting us from you." Maya felt the world tilt. The data was gone. The smart move, finding the embezzlement, hadn't saved her. It had been the final trigger for her father's break. He wasn't choosing Vanessa over the truth. He was choosing the illusion of peace over the agony of reality. "I've already signed the papers," David said, his voice dropping to a terrifying, flat monotone. "There's a boarding school in Vermont. High security, specialists. They'll help you, Maya, because I clearly can't." "Vermont?" Maya whispered. "Dad, you can't." "A car will be here in an hour. Go upstairs and pack. Don't say another word." He helped Vanessa up, his arm around her waist, shielding her from the monster in the room. As they walked away, Vanessa didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had won. Maya sat on the cold basement floor, surrounded by the shards of her father's trust and her mother's broken memories. She was 17, she was alone, and in 60 minutes she would be disappeared. She went to her room, the air vent whistling a lonely, hollow tune. She sat on her bed, her hands on her knees. She could hear the muffled sounds of the party continuing below. The clinking of glasses, the laughter, the celebration of her own exile. She leaned her head against the wall, near the vent. "Accidental, of course," a voice whispered. Maya froze. It was Vanessa. She was in the room directly below, likely the kitchen. "David is so fragile," Vanessa's voice continued, stripped of all its warmth. "After the girl is gone, he'll be even worse. A single slip on the stairs, or maybe an overdose of his heart medication. The estate will be mine within the month. I've already contacted the broker in Brooklyn. We sell the house and disappear." Maya's heart stopped. Disposed of. Vanessa wasn't just staying for the money. She was staying for the kill. Maya stood up. She wasn't a prosecutor anymore. She wasn't an auditor. She was a survivor. She looked at the window. It was locked with a high-tech security bolt David had installed for her safety. But Maya knew the math of that lock. She'd studied the manual months ago. She took a small metal nail file from her vanity and jammed it into the sensor. A spark erupted, the smell of scorched dust filled the air, and the lock clicked open. She climbed out onto the roof, the night air biting at her skin. She moved like a shadow, crawling across the shingles until she reached the kitchen window. The owl, the hidden nanny cam she'd installed on the first day. Vanessa had forgotten it existed because she'd been so focused on Maya's phone. Maya reached through the cracked kitchen window, her fingers brushing the ceramic feathers of the bird. She pulled the memory card out. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She climbed back into the house and headed straight for the dining room. The room was packed. David was standing at the head of the table, a glass of champagne in his hand, preparing to make the final toast. "To a new beginning," David said, his voice shaking. "I have a better toast," Maya said, stepping into the light. The room went silent. Vanessa's face turned pale, her eyes darting to the door, looking for the security guards. Maya didn't wait. She walked to the large media projector meant for the wedding slideshow. She plugged the memory card directly into the port. The screen on the wall flickered to life. It wasn't a slideshow of memories. It was the kitchen 3 days ago. The footage was crystal clear. "He's a doormat, Justin." Vanessa's voice boomed through the high-end speakers. "I've already drained 50,000. Once the girl is in Vermont, I'll finish him off. He won't even see it coming. He's too busy rewriting his dead wife's grocery list to notice a blade at his throat." The room was so quiet, you could hear the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. The video continued. It showed Vanessa slamming her arm into the banister. It showed her laughing as she deleted Maya's files. It showed the raw, jagged truth of a predator in her element. David stood frozen, the champagne glass slipping from his fingers. It shattered on the floor, the sound like a gunshot. He looked at Vanessa. She wasn't crying now. She wasn't injured. She looked like a cornered animal, her lips pulled back in a snarl. "It's a deep fake," Vanessa screamed. "She's a tech freak. She made it." But the guests weren't looking at the screen anymore. They were looking at David. He walked toward Vanessa, his face a mask of cold, hard realization. He didn't say a word. He just looked at the bruise on her arm, the one he'd used as an excuse to exile his own daughter. The front door burst open. Not the car for Vermont, but the police. Robert Anderson, David's perfectionist partner, had seen enough. He'd called them 10 minutes ago when he saw the first signs of the accidental death plan on Maya's open laptop in the basement. Maya watched as the officers moved in. They didn't treat Vanessa like a queen. They treated her like a criminal. They clicked the cuffs onto her wrists, the cold metal biting into her skin. Vanessa looked at Maya one last time. No more crack, 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 no more purring. Just the silent, impotent rage of a loser. The house emptied. The guests fled, the smell of lilies and rosemary fading into the night. Maya stood on the front porch, the cool air finally feeling clean. The wind chimes clinked, a lonely, mourning sound. But for the first time, it didn't feel like a funeral. David stepped out onto the porch. He looked at the mud-caked work boots sitting by the door, the ones that didn't belong to anyone. He looked at Maya, his eyes red and raw. I didn't see it," he whispered. "I wanted the lie so badly that I let it destroy the only real thing I had left." He reached out, his hand trembling. He didn't offer a corporate pivot or a plan. He just touched Maya's shoulder. "I'm sorry, Maya. I'm so sorry." Maya looked out at the manicured lawn, at the world that felt a little less like a spreadsheet and a little more like a home. She didn't hug him yet. The scars were too deep for that. But she didn't pull away. "The math is finally right, Dad," she said, her voice soft in the fading light. "One father, one daughter. That's enough." They sat together on the porch steps as the sun began to rise, the slow work of healing beginning in the quiet, honest light of a new day.